The way the Texan thinks is that, if they don't like what's going on in the United States,
Frank Beard was ZZ Top's drummer for an astonishing 56 years, from the band's formation in 1969 until his passing in 2026, making him one of the most durable and dedicated musicians in rock history. And yet the single most ironic thing about his entire career was his name, because despite being called Beard, he was the only member of ZZ Top who never actually wore one, sticking instead to a simple mustache, while his bandmates Billy Gibbons and Dusty Hill became instantly recognizable around the world for their long, flowing, almost mythical beards that became the band's visual trademark, a joke so perfect that Billy Gibbons himself once quipped, "Frank's beard is on his driver's license," a line that fans and interviewers repeated for decades every time they wanted to poke fun at the drummer, who somehow ended up with the most beard-related name in rock and roll, but the least amount of actual facial hair. Frank Lee Beard was born on June 11, 1949, in the small town of Frankston, Texas, and was raised in Irving, Texas, where his path into music began almost by accident. As a teenager, he watched the Beatles perform on television and noticed just how wild the girls in the audience went for band. And being a normal teenage boy, he decided right then that learning to play drums might be a pretty good way to impress girls himself, a decision that, decades later, would end up shaping the sound of one of the most successful blues rock bands in American history. Long before ZZ Top existed, Frank cut his teeth playing a series of Texas bands, including American Blues, the Warlocks, the Hustlers, and the Cellar Dwellers, and it was during this stretch of his career that he crossed paths with a bassist named Dusty Hill, a friendship and musical partnership that would end up being one of the most important relationships of his life. In 1969, Frank linked up with guitarist Billy Gibbons to start a new band, and it was Frank who brought Dusty Hill into the fold, completing the trio that would soon become ZZ Top, and after honing their now legendary Texas boogie blues rock sound, the band released ZZ Top's first album in January 1971, kicking off a run that would eventually span more than 5 decades without a single lineup change among its 3 core members, an almost unheard of level of stability in the notoriously unstable world of rock bands. On those early records, Frank was actually credited under the nickname Rue Beard, appearing that way on both the first album and their third record, Tres Hombres, before finally being credited under his real name from that point onward. Musically, Frank Beard was never just a punchline about facial hair. He was widely regarded as a genuinely brilliant and inventive drummer, best known for pioneering what became known as the Texas Shuffle, a steady, deeply groove-driven drumming style that gave ZZ Top's music its unmistakable swagger, and this playing style became the backbone of some of the band's biggest and most enduring songs, including the snare-tapping intro and driving shuffle of Log Range and the tight, punchy groove of Tush, both of which are still considered some of the greatest drum performances in classic rock. His influence reached its commercial peak with the release of 1984's Eliminator, an album that produced massive hits like Gimme All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed Man, and Legs, and went on to sell more than 10 million copies worldwide, cementing ZZ Top's status as one of the defining rock acts of the era, an achievement that eventually led to the band being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004. Frank's journey wasn't without hardship, though. In the early 1980s, he struggled with substance abuse and eventually checked himself into rehab, a period during which the band went on hiatus and his bandmates simply told him to take however long he needed to get better, a quiet but powerful display of loyalty that speaks to just how tight-knit the trio truly was. And remarkably, Frank came back from that struggle and continued to play with the band for decades afterward, right up through their most recent studio album, 2012's La Futura. In the final years of his life, Frank's health began to decline, and in March 2025, the band announced that he had temporarily stepped away from touring to deal with an unspecified health issue. And just last week, ZZ Top had to abruptly cancel a scheduled show at the Hollywood Bowl because of his condition. Then on August 18, 2026, the news broke that fans around the world had been dreading. Frank Beard passed away at age 77 in hospice care at his ranch in Richmond, Texas, surrounded by his family, with no official cause of death given. Billy Gibbons released a heartfelt statement following the news, saying, "Today, Elwood and I lost a great friend and collaborator, and the world lost one of the most naturally innovative drummers and a great and true son of Texas." His signature backbeat was key to keeping ZZ on top. The band, of which he was part for 6 decades, is going to keep on keeping on as he had wished. And out of respect for Frank, the band canceled several upcoming tour dates before announcing that the tour would resume that weekend in Austin, one of Frank's favorite cities to perform in. His death comes 5 years after the passing of his longtime friend and bandmate Dusty Hill in 2021. Meaning Billy Gibbons is now the only surviving original member of ZZ Top, closing the chapter on one of the most legendary and beloved lineups in the history of American rock music. Rest in peace, Frank Beard, 1949 to 2026, the man whose name said Beard, but whose legacy was written entirely in rhythm.